I wonder if there's a the best of both worlds thing here, where you could have something in your hands which supported touch, but
Smart glass, and you sort of like play it there.
Yeah,
but
I mean, smart glass is not quite it, is it?
Right.
It's not trying to be the interface. It's trying to be the supported a second screen almost. But what I'm thinking of, it's always been a challenge, is that the great thing about the mouse and touch, they're very similar, but the console with the controller, it does mean that there's certain types of games which are incredibly hard to do.
I guess PS4's got that little touchpad on the top. Maybe that helps to some degree.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what the second or third generation of games that leverage that. It's the same thing with Kinect. It's the same thing with a lot of these new kind of like interfacey type things, where it's like the first generation, it's going to be like, oh, you can select menus, fantastic. But eventually someone's going to figure out a way to do it interestingly. And I hope that it gets there faster than maybe it did with...
Well, and it may, because now there's so many more developers that can do even more creative games at different price points and everything with this independent developer program, which is great. So we're hopefully not going to see just a couple big releases a month. We're going to see all the floodgates are going to open, and I think that's why some developers worry about what was special in the Xbox era or the PlayStation 3 era was that, hey, you just had a couple games coming out a week. Now it's going to be all of these games. But do you think is this going to lead to more creativity on the consoles? More, something I think back to like something like Milo. Like, would that game have survived in this new environment where it could have been cheaper, it could have been more experimental versus having to be a $60 boxed product that comes out on disc?
Yes, absolutely. And if this had happened in the last generation, in this generation, or the next generation,
Milo would have survived.
Milo would have almost certainly survived, because it allows for diversity. The problem is, now we're talking about next generation, the world is already in a place where you can self-publish and self-release, and there are these incredibly mature, robust things like Steam and Steam Early Access and Steam Greenlight and all the iTunes stuff, that it kind of feels a little bit like on the consoles they're kind of catching up, and that's a worry for me, is that they have to double down on their support. Send 3 consoles out rather than 2 consoles out.
I think it's going to be interesting just because this is the first round of consoles that were built with this like modern digital era in mind. They've kind of been trying to like shoehorn it into the 360 and the PS3 through updates, but like the console wasn't made for it, and it's starting to show. I feel like when I turn on my device, it takes like a minute to load, and it's really hard to find things. And so now, like having a fresh start, like understanding the way that things like Steam and Amazon work, and seeing how they handle discoverability and recommending games and that kind of stuff will be really interesting, just to see if like you're saying, there's going to be a lot of games now, so how am I going to be able to find something? And I hope they have a good solution for that.
I really hope that both the consoles spend the time to like educate consumers that is a method by which you can buy games as well. I think that one of the biggest problems with, like, we spend a lot of time harping on storefronts, and in all cases they're not as good as Steam. But I think one of the biggest problems with present day downloadable games, which kind of like encompasses most of the independent stuff on console, is that there's just so many people that don't even know that you can buy a game over the internet on your console. And one of the things that I think was exciting about the concept of Microsoft doing a digital-only platform was that everyone would have to go through that process to get every game, and therefore educate themselves, and therefore know the process by which you download a game. And we talk a lot about Minecraft coming to 360. There was this big worry that, like, oh my gosh, it's going to be this huge vacuum that's going to suck up all the sales, and everyone else on the platform is going to fail, and Minecraft is going to sell 10 million copies. But really, I think what's happened is it's educated people on how to buy 360 games. And you got to go over a couple, and then you got to search down a little bit, and then you got to click 10 buttons or so. And I think taking those learnings and taking the kind of like time and money, frankly, the marketing budget to actually educate people to say like, hey, yeah, you can still go to GameStop and you can grab a $60 game, or you can just kind of wake up in the morning and press the download button, and if you're on high speed,
you're absolutely right. And there's the fundamental problem. It's more than just we're going to allow indie developers to self-publish. It's a big problem of how you get people away from the addiction of playing, just the retail copies, and how they get to love downloading games, and that's a tough problem to crack.
It is. I think Steam's taken some steps that I think seem, kind of bare bones or obvious, like having themed sales where people can buy games that they probably wouldn't have bought.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are buying them and just kind of letting them sit there, but I think that experience and that kind of like break down the barrier and say, hey, if you don't want to spend $20 on this game, okay, that's fine. Want to spend $5 on it, maybe you'll
No,
give it a
there's a whole
shot.
new audience that's going to pick it up.
But I do think there are very basic things like trying to 360 started it by making all games require a trial, which I think was a really interesting positive choice because it meant everybody could have a little bit of experience. But again, if they don't know that they can do that, they're never even going to actually use that. So I think trying to get people more and more onto the actual especially if the storefront is I can buy in 2 clicks instead of buying in 14 clicks.
Right.
Those things will help a lot.
Or buy on your phone. Now, let's talk about you're going to be able. This week I think Xbox and Sony both said, hey, if you see a game on your phone, you'll be able to click it and it'll download in the background. So when you come home, it'll be sitting there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's what we want.
Yeah, and I
we want to embrace this digital age, and
More sales for you guys. So you no longer you don't need publishers anymore, right?
Well, it's interesting how
None of
publishers
you guys have
evolve.
publishers, right?
Yeah,
I do.
Well, no.
Well, I guess that's true.
I do.
I do for the mobile version
Okay.
because it's interesting now that there's this new problem which publishers can solve. It's all about discovery,
Right.
and how do you get out of 1 million apps or
Awareness,
a ridiculous number as it is on iOS? How do you get your thing discovered? And that's where a publisher kind of specialises again.
Do a little marketing.
We love publishers again now. Yeah.
Just on a different level, right? A little less control.
It's a different level of love.
Exactly. All right, when we come back in the bonus round, we're going to talk more about what we expect from Microsoft and Sony later this year.